Could Russia's hypersonic weapon ambush destroy American pride or cause rage? September 18, 2025, the Caribbean Sea was thrown into disarray as a Russian Yasin-class submarine launched 12 Zircon hypersonic missiles at a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group led by the USS Gerald R. Seconds later, three 2160 mm bombers fired a salvo of KH-95 cruise missiles into the sky, filling U.S. radar screens with more than 20 warheads hurtling at Mach 9 speeds. Washington counterattacked swiftly and relentlessly. 6 F-35C Lightning II jets roared overhead, launching 30 JAS MXR precision missiles at Russian positions. Below the surface, a Virginia-class submarine fires 5 Cav-X supersonic torpedo, while above, 125 XQ-58 Valkyrie drones swarm the Admiral Nakhimov like a storm of steel. The initial Russian ambush has exploded into a brutal gun battle. Can Moscow's war machine withstand America's fury? Or is this the moment Russia pays the ultimate price? Follow me because the truth will shock you. 9 a.m., September 18th, 2025. The Caribbean, usually marked by calm blue waters and quiet trade routes, suddenly found itself at the center of a global storm. The U.S. Navy swung into action, deploying the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, a $13 billion, $100,000 ton symbol of American power accompanied by 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, each equipped with more than 90 vertical launch tubes. Their course was unmistakable, straight for the Venezuelan coast. Venezuela is home to the world's largest proven oil reserves, more than 300 billion barrels, surpassing even Saudi Arabia's. Controlling the region means controlling an energy lifeline that powers global economies. Washington calls it a security issue. Moscow calls it imperialist abuse. Russia did not hesitate to respond to the U.S. advance. Moving south, the nuclear-powered cruiser Admiral Nakhimov cut through the Atlantic waves fully equipped with Caliber and S-400 systems. Below the surface, a Yasin-class nuclear submarine equipped with Zircon hypersonic missiles glided into the dark waters. Together, they formed a steel shield around Caracas, signaling to the world Venezuela would not stand alone. From the first radar contact, words became weapons. U.S. officials condemned Russia's intervention in what they called America's backyard. Russian commanders fired back, calling the U.S. maneuvers blatant aggression. Radio broadcasts blared across Moscow and Washington, each side promising consequences, each side refusing to blink. On the surface, the Caribbean Sea sparkled under the tropical sun. But beneath the calm, an invisible fuse had been lit. Every bow pointed, every missile armed, every crew tense. It felt as if the entire hemisphere was holding its breath. One false move, one spark could turn heated words into a raging fire. Could the U.S. fleet hold its ground? Or would Russia's hypersonic barrage shatter America's shield in seconds? By 9:25 a.m., the USS Gerald R. Ford was underway. Its sailors still doing their jobs, some on watch, some off-duty resting. A young officer named Lieutenant Mark Reynolds on video call with his wife. Suddenly, the alarm sounded from below. A Russian Yasin-class nuclear submarine surfaced and fired a salvo of 12 Zircon hypersonic missiles in less than 2 minutes, traveling at Mach 9, more than 7,000 more an hour. The missiles steer across the Caribbean sky, leaving trails of fire that lit up the radar screens of the USS Gerald R. Ford. Almost simultaneously, the horizon darkened with the arrival of 3 2160 mm Blackjack bombers. Each lumbering aircraft carried the brand new KH-95 long-range cruise missiles boasting ranges of nearly 3,700 miles. One by one, their bomb bays opened. In perfect coordination with the submarine strike, the bombers unleashed wave after wave of missiles, creating a swarm of incoming fire. Too fast, too many, too lethal to ignore. Inside the American command room, alarms sounded. The Aegis combat system tracked dozens of red icons that filled the screen. By 9:30 a.m., officers were shouting intercept coordinates. Incoming hypersonic Mach 9, multiple orbits. The crews braced as the destroyers deployed countermeasures. The American response was immediate. SM-6 Block 1B interceptors were fired in volleys, racing upward to meet the incoming sirens. At close range, Helios laser systems burned through smaller threats while electronic warfare pods worked to scramble Russian targeting. Incredibly, more than 2/3 of the barrage was intercepted before impact, a technological miracle under extreme pressure, but not everything could be stopped. 3 missiles penetrated the air defenses, but 2 low-yield missiles fell harmlessly into the sea, and 1 squirmed into the stern of the American escort, tearing through the ship's aft deck. The explosion was horrific, sending flames and shrapnel flying across the ship. 7 American sailors were injured, some thrown violently across the deck as sirens blared and smoke filled the night air. The normally well-organized formation was thrown into temporary chaos, damage control teams scrambling, medics rushing to stabilize the wounded. For Moscow, it was a carefully calculated message. America is not invulnerable. For Washington, it was a chilling reminder that even the world's most advanced defenses were vulnerable. The Caribbean, once resonant with rhetoric, now echoed with the unmistakable sounds of war. And the next move belongs to the United States. Don't miss the next developments in this battle. Hit like and subscribe to follow the fight. The Russian ambush had drawn blood. 1 U.S. escort vessel lay crippled, its stern torn apart, smoke still rising. 7 sailors lay wounded, rushed below decks for emergency treatment. For a moment, the fleet staggered under the chaos, but that moment did not last. On the bridge of the USS Gerald R. Ford, Rear Admiral Thomas Caldwell slammed his fist against the console. His voice cut through the confusion like a blade. No more warnings. We strike back now. Within minutes, the skies roared with American fury. 6 F-35C Lightning II fighters launched from the carrier's deck in rapid succession, their afterburners streaking across the Caribbean night. Armed with AGM-158D JASSM XR cruise missiles, each aircraft carried the power to devastate targets hundreds of miles away. Their orders were clear. The Russian flagship, beneath the waves, a Virginia-class attack submarine prepared its own deadly answer. Hatches opened, releasing Tava-AX supercavitating torpedoes that raced toward Russian hulls at over 200 knots, encased in vapor bubbles that sliced through water like bullets through air. Then came the most shocking move of all. 9:45 a.m. From the deck of a U.S. destroyer, a swarm of 125 XQ-58 Valkyrie drones erupted into the sky. Autonomous, coordinated, and relentless, they descended on the Admiral Nikimov like a storm of metal hornets. The Russian cruiser's deck guns and missile launchers blazed, firing at full capacity. Over 4,000 sailors on board scrambled, some manning anti-air batteries, others desperately reloading missiles. The ship's S-500 naval defense system spat interceptors until its magazines ran dry. But the swarm was endless. For every drone shot down, 5 more pressed forward. They dove, twisted, and jammed radars with electromagnetic noise. Sailors fired rifles into the night sky in panic, the once proud warship turning into a fortress under siege. The Admiral Nakimov, a $2 billion titan of steel, was overwhelmed. Then came the final blow. A wave of JASSM missiles streaked in from the F-35CS above, striking amidships. The Virginia's torpedoes detonated beneath the keel. A blinding fireball erupted, tearing the cruiser in half. Flames leapt hundreds of feet into the air. In seconds, Russia's most formidable surface combatant was nothing more than a sinking inferno. The message was unmistakable. America's steel net had closed, and when struck, it struck back harder. The Caribbean battlefield had shifted. Russia had fired first, but the United States had answered with annihilation. What do you think happens next? Does Russia rally or retreat? Keep watching to see the shocking twist. The destruction of the Admiral Nakimov sent shockwaves not only through the Caribbean waters, but across the entire globe. Once hailed as the jewel of Russia's northern fleet, the cruiser's fiery demise was broadcast worldwide. Footage of a 20,000-ton warship exploding in a blinding fireball played on repeat across international news networks. For Russia, it was humiliation. For the United States, it was victory. On the surviving Russian vessels, panic spread like wildfire. The Yasen-class submarine frantically maneuvered to avoid American sonar, while smaller escort ships scrambled in vain to cover the retreat. Moscow ordered the immediate deployment of naval S-500 interceptors from its other ships, but the magazines were already depleted. Hundreds of interceptors had been fired in less than an hour, leaving the fleet with barely enough to defend against another wave. The casualty toll mounted. Analysts estimated over 200 Russian sailors lost at sea, many trapped as the Nikimov's hull collapsed beneath the waves. Survivors clung to lifeboats, their emergency flares marking a trail of defeat across the dark water. Russian commanders, stunned by the scale of the loss, resorted to desperate rhetoric. Kremlin media blasted warnings of strategic retaliation, hinting openly at nuclear escalation. Anchors declared that Moscow was prepared to unleash the ultimate deterrent if Washington dared advance further. Yet behind the bluster, the reality was stark. The haggarded fleet began a slow withdrawal, steering north toward the Atlantic. Russian formations broke apart, with vessels scattering to minimize their exposure to further U.S. strikes. What was once a proud show of strength now resembled a fractured, fleeing armada. The world watched in disbelief. Venezuela, heavily armed but caught off guard, hesitated to act. Its government issued muted statements of solidarity, but Caracas dared not fire a single shot, fearing the crossfire of two superpowers. China, too, observed cautiously, its naval advisors signaling silence rather than intervention. On the American side, discipline returned quickly. Damage control crews stabilized the injured sailors, and the escort ship's fires were finally brought under control. The fleet, still bloodied, stood firm, its commander unwavering, its weapons reloaded. What had begun as a battle of words had spiraled into a clash of steel and fire, and though Russia had shouted the loudest, it was Moscow now in retreat. The Caribbean was no longer their stage. It was America's message board, written in smoke and wreckage for the world to see. The smoke had not yet cleared when Washington began to take stock. Just hours after Russia withdrew, the Pentagon released a barrage of data, satellite imagery, radar logs, and live footage of the Admiral Nakimov's destruction. The images were broadcast in parallel on every major network. The vaunted Russian cruiser ripped apart, the American warships holding their formation. The message was unmistakable. At a press conference, U.S. officials declared, "The Caribbean remains secure. The United States will not surrender its hemisphere to foreign intimidation." The words echoed far beyond Washington. In Brussels, London, and Tokyo, allies breathed a sigh of relief. NATO hailed the show of force, noting that more than 90% of Russia's hypersonic missiles had been neutralized, a feat once thought impossible. Military analysts called it the most successful live demonstration of U.S. missile defense in modern history. By the end of the clash, Russia had lost its crown jewel, suffered 200 confirmed casualties, and lost almost its entire arsenal of advanced interceptors. The U.S., despite wounded crews and a damaged escort, stood firm, unfazed. Russia continued to show off. Kremlin radio broadcasts repeatedly threatened nuclear retaliation, but the image of a burning warship drowned out the rhetoric. Markets were reeling. Oil prices jumped 12% overnight, but confidence in American naval superiority surged. Energy analysts were quick to remind the world of Venezuela's 300 billion barrels of proven reserves, a resource that nearly sparked a global war, but now sits in Washington's shadow. The symbolism was unavoidable. In waters once called America's backyard, the U.S. Navy not only defended its dominance but expanded it, demonstrating that no rival, no matter how well armed, could gain control. Allies rallied behind Washington. Rivals recalculated their strategies. And as the sun set over the Caribbean, the seas grew calm. But beneath the calm was a warning echoing over every wave. Challenge America's hegemony and the price would be high. The clash in the Caribbean was more than a mere naval skirmish. It was a declaration sculpted in steel, fire, and sacrifice that the global balance of power still favored Washington. Days later, the world saw the images again. The towering plume of smoke rising from the shattered hull of the Admiral Nikimov, the disciplined American carrier strike group holding its formation, and the chaotic scenes of Russian sailors scrambling in vain. These were more than moments on the battlefield. They were symbols of deterrence. The numbers spoke for themselves. 12 hypersonic missiles, 3 nuclear bombers launched in a single coordinated attack, but more than 90% were intercepted by superior American weapons. The U.S. lost a frigate and 7 sailors were wounded, but Russia lost its most formidable cruiser, more than 200 personnel and billions of rubles in weapons. For Venezuela, which holds the world's richest oil reserves, the confrontation was a brutal reminder of geography. For China, it was a cautionary tale of proxy entanglement, and for Russia, it was an unmistakable humiliation. Rhetoric cannot mask the realities of the battlefield. Yet beyond the numbers and headlines, one truth remains clear. The Caribbean may be returning to calm, But the echoes of this confrontation will reverberate for decades. Every adversary now knows the costs of challenging America in its own hemisphere. Every ally now sees that Washington will act fast, decisive, and overwhelming. The Caribbean crisis leaves a simple warning carried across the airwaves. In a world of shifting alliances and dangerous ambitions, the United States is not just a participant, but the ultimate arbiter of power. If this analysis resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your voice helps fuel our mission of uncovering secrets and exposing truths. Follow us and don't miss the next hotspots.